Everyone said it was going to be a disaster.
Actually, opening ceremonies can be pretty boring.
It was very much the best of British.
We didn't know that Queen Elizabeth II was going to make this starring role.
She came up with her iconic line, "Thank you, Mr. Bond."
She is the most iconic person in the UK at the time. Welcome to Royal Exclusive Rewind, your look back at the most memorable moments, good and bad, in the history of the royal family. This week, we're taking a trip back to the joyous days of London 2012 Olympics. The Games began on a warm British summer night in July with an extraordinary opening ceremony directed by Danny Boyle. The event featured a major surprise, a top secret acting debut by Queen Elizabeth II, appearing by royal appointment alongside Daniel Craig's James Bond. Joining me to discuss this is host of the Daily Espresso podcast, JJ Anissiobi, and royal correspondent, Sarah Hewson. Welcome to you both. 2012, London Olympics. If you recall back, I don't know if you're the same as me, but everyone said it was going to be a disaster. London's going to fail. Of course we can't hold an Olympics. It's going to be an absolute night. Everything's going to go wrong. But that opening ceremony really, for me, on a wonderful July summer's night, absolutely kicked off on such a wave of goodwill.
There was a huge amount of cynicism about London 2012 in the run-up to it, and this fear that we weren't going to be able to pull it off. We were spending all of this money. The previous year we'd had the riots in London, for example, all of this money being invested in the stadium. What was it all for? And then, on the night, July 2012, that opening ceremony, and everybody got behind it. And I think in part due to the role played by the late Queen.
Well, let's talk about that. For me, it was the highlight of that. I mean, it's a wonderful ceremony. You still watch it back now, listen to the music. It still sends shivers down my spine as an Englishman. I was so proud of that night. We didn't know that Queen Elizabeth II was going to make this starring role, because there was this whole thing, they had a practice a couple of weeks before and everyone was told to keep the secret. Where were you when you first saw, because I think we had Daniel Craig walking through Buckingham Palace, didn't we? And then walked into the Queen's drawing room and it was her.
I was at home watching it. I'd been invited by some sponsor, I think it was Samsung, had invited me to go and watch it, but my boss wouldn't let me leave the office early enough to get to the stadium. Yeah, so I missed out.
Never forgiven them? Never
forgiven them for it. So I watched it from home and it was fantastic. It was just amazing. Because I think, thinking back to it now, Daniel Craig had reformed Bond. Bond was no longer just the generic white British polite guy. He was now muscular, sexy, fit, able to properly fight. And then you go, so the feeling around Bond was like, Bond's back. And then seeing the Queen, very different, I think, to say how we view Charles, because up until that point, I don't recall seeing the Queen do anything socially apart from the events she has to go to. I didn't see her sense of humour. I always heard, she's got a wicked sense of humour, but I never saw it in real life.
It came across almost through her mannerisms, didn't it? It was quite comic and quite light-hearted and quite fun. You're right, it wasn't pomp and ceremony and stuff like that.
It was fantastic. And is it this ceremony where he jumps out the airplane?
Yeah.
So she has a speaking part.
Yeah.
Which was her request. They didn't expect her to. So Danny Boyle had gone to the palace to discuss this sketch and what the Queen would be wearing, so what the stunt double should be wearing, and Angela Kelly...
Hold on. Yeah, this is spoiler alert. There was a stunt double.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Matt, I
ruined it for you. 14 years, and you thought that there was Queen Elizabeth II parachuting into the Olympic Stadium.
Oh, sorry, go on.
So Danny Boyle had gone into the palace, and Angela Kelly, the Queen's dresser and close confidant, had said, look, let me just go and ask her if she'll do this, and asked her, and she was up for it, but she very much wanted to have a speaking part, and she came up with her iconic line, "Thank you, Mr. Bond," and this all came about, and I don't think Danny Boyle could believe that this was actually happening. And nobody knew, as you say, Matt. It wasn't just that the press were kept out of this. Other members of the royal family didn't know about this either. And so William and Harry apparently were like, "Go, Granny!" when they saw her.
All the viewers were saying, "Go, Granny," because the helicopter goes across through London, goes over or kind of through Tower Bridge, and all the way up to the Olympic Park. And I wasn't expecting what happened, and look at the picture there. Kind of unglamorous picture there, actually.
It's showing the bloomers.
Showing her blue. But everyone gasped when apparently, according to Sarah, it was a stunt double.
Gary Connery, the stunt double there, because the premise was Bond had gone to Buckingham Palace to rescue her, and there was this, big rescue attempt, and then in she comes into the Olympic Stadium. And I think it was the kind of first time, as you say, Matt, that we'd really seen her get behind something like this. We've had more since then, haven't we? We've had the Paddington sketch, Jubilee. We also had the Obama sketch that Prince Harry orchestrated. And so, we've seen that sense of humour come out. And, to have that at the opening ceremony. I mean, you said, you watched this opening ceremony with this great feeling of pride. Actually, opening ceremonies can be pretty boring, can't they? They're very, very long. But she lifted this entire ceremony onto another level. And one that will go down in the history books.
Oh, absolutely. It was very much the best of British. The Spice Girls on top of the black cabs.
Yes.
And even in the Queen's video, I think the corgis are shown running around her feet as well. And her jumping out the plane, or the stunt double jumping out the plane with the Union flag parachute, that's a nod back to Roger Moore's Bond. He did the same stunts. But yeah, it was just fantastic.
And it was choreographed that she then walked into the stadium at the moment that it landed, and then we see her in the same outfit.
Are you surprised, JJ, that the Queen agreed to do this? Sarah points out that she wanted a speaking part.
I was surprised that she agreed to do it, because that wasn't the side of the Queen that I'd ever seen before. So it was a wonderful surprise, though, and it was. I mean, the Spice Girls that was a reunion for the Spice Girls when they did that ceremony. And that everyone was looking forward to that. Oh, they made Spice Girls. Oh, Coldplay performing, who were the biggest band in the world at the time. And the Queen topped all of them completely, stole the show.
It's amazing that event we talk. It was such a kind of iconic event. I think to people my generation anyway, and watching, we thought it was going to be awful. The whole games, we thought the opening ceremony was going to be awful. But it was. She is the most iconic person in the UK at the time. I mean, she more iconic. David Beckham was there with a flame, but she totally was the most iconic moment of those Olympics.
I think that's when the royal family peaked in their popularity. Was after that.
They were on a high, weren't they? Because 2011 was William and Catherine's wedding. We'd had the Diamond Jubilee in June 2012. We'd had that river pageant going along at the Thames. Poor old Prince Philip had got really ill after that and ended up in hospital. We'd had this huge outpouring of sympathy for the Queen as she'd had to step onto the stage at the concert outside Buckingham Palace without Philip and take part in the procession to the service at Westminster without her husband by her side. And I think public attitudes to the royal family at this point were extremely high, 69% support for the monarchy. I mean, figures they could only dream of, really.
Yeah. These were the good old days then. Have they got better since, or better or worse since 2012?
I think it got better for them when Harry and Meghan first joined together with the Fab Four, and then it very swiftly dropped off massively after that. And now we have a royal family at war. Yeah, it's gonna. I don't think Charles is going to be as popular as Queen Elizabeth II was. I think he's a great king, but I think. Queen Elizabeth II, she comes across to me, and certainly I think most people about my generation, as the mother figure, as the grandma. But I don't look at Charles and think he's a father of the nation.
So is the answer, therefore, to have King Charles or maybe Prince Andrew leaping out of a helicopter?
Maybe Andrew out of a helicopter over the sea and the parachute doesn't work. Maybe that would work. That may be popular with people. No, there's nothing that they can do really that's going to capture the hearts the way that Queen Elizabeth did.
And I think, you talked about the mystique of her, and that was why this was so
surprising.
Surprising, because we hadn't seen her in this guise before. And to see her do that was just extraordinary. And the most incredible sort of scene, and that sense of humour. I just think it did lift the nation, and this was a time of great hope. We'd had the marriage. We were yet to have the birth of Prince George.
Yeah.
But, you know, Harry, there were the young royals. It was exciting. You know, there was a huge amount of promise around the next generation and what was to come. And of course, things have changed.
Yeah, dramatically.
Dramatically.
What do you mean a laugh about the idea of Charles or Andrew, you know, kind of overdoing that to kind of boost popularity? But this kind of thing, is it just a late Queen specific? Could she have been the only person that could have achieved this? Could you see Charles? Could you see Harry? Could you see William in a future Olympics or a future event doing this kind of sending themselves up in many ways?
Harry's done it several times, hasn't he, on
Yeah.
US late night chat shows, for example, as well. So it wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary
Exactly.
for him. I mean, Charles could do it and, you know, people would enjoy watching it.
It wouldn't have the same
But
impact.
it wouldn't have the same impact as this. And I think that's partly a generational thing
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And you mentioned earlier about William and Harry. Was it they said go granny? So they didn't actually
granny.
know that this was
No.
gonna
No,
happen.
she managed to keep it a surprise from them as well, which I think is really quite remarkable. I think Paddington also a surprise to them as well? Because you'll remember the scenes of the great-grandchildren of the little ones all sitting there and then aghast as they saw
We'd been
Granny
given a
there
tip
with
off because
great-granny
it was
with
Platinum
Paddington.
Jubilee weekend.
Yeah.
We might do this on another episode, the Paddington one, actually.
Yeah.
But it's very good to draw comparisons because we were told, journalists were given a little tip off about half an hour before because we were all, to be fair, we were all sat in the kind of little mini auditorium. We'd had a long day and we started drinking some beers. And they said, guys, just to warn you, this is coming out.
You're not seeing things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It's not super strength lager.
Yeah, but no, I don't think Paddington tops her cameo there. I don't think it tops. And
No.
I think it was such a celebration of the nation, and we needed the Queen there to be the iconic person that she was.
And I think it sent a message to the whole nation that this is something that to get behind. This is a huge moment for Britain, and let's get on board with this.
So I remember you could volunteer, all the staff were volunteers, and I applied to volunteer for, I don't know, to go to the volleyball and be
Of course you did.
a steward.
Beach volleyball on Horse Girls Parade. I wonder why you chose that one, JJ.
And I couldn't get in. They were oversubscribed with volunteers. There was like a huge waiting list. So yeah, like the country really got behind this. It's fantastic.
And how could it fail after the Queen, hangs out with James Bond and parachute jumps into the stadium?
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, guys. I've really enjoyed that, actually. And I really, you can go on YouTube and you can watch the opening ceremony and listen to the music again and stuff like that. So I'm very tempted to watch that footage again. Thanks, guys. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive Rewind. Thanks to my guests and to you for joining us. I hope you'll tune in next time for more royal nostalgia as we delve back into history to uncover another iconic moment.